Have you ever really, truly stopped to think about where power comes from? I mean, not just who's in office today, but the final, ultimate say in how an entire country is run. Well, today we're going to unpack the one concept that gets right to the heart of that question: sovereignty.
So let's just ask it straight up. When you boil everything down, you get past all the laws, the politicians, the whole system, who or what is really in charge? That's the big puzzle we're going to piece together right now. And here's our game plan. First, we'll nail down what sovereignty even is, the ultimate power play. Then we'll look at its two different faces: inside versus outside control. After that, we'll get into the fascinating difference between power on paper and power in the real world. Then we'll see where we, the people, fit into all this. And finally, we'll cover the so-called unbreakable rules of sovereignty. Let's do it.
Okay, first up, the ultimate power play. We gotta start by defining the core of what we're even talking about. So, at its absolute core, sovereignty is all about ultimate, unrestricted power. It's this idea that within a country's borders, there is one final authority that is higher than everyone and everything else. It's the source of power that expects and demands to be obeyed. You could call it the buck stops here principle for a whole nation. Now, this idea isn't as ancient as you might think. It really started to take shape back in the 16th century, right as modern countries were beginning to form in Europe. See, before that, power was often split. You had kings, but you also had powerful religious figures. But then in 1648, a huge moment, the Peace of Westphalia. This treaty basically put it in writing, making it official that states were independent and in charge of their own affairs. All right, so that brings us to our next piece of the puzzle. It turns out sovereignty has two very different faces. We're talking inside versus outside control. Think of it this way. On one hand, you have internal sovereignty. This is all about the power inside a country's borders. It's the ultimate authority over all citizens and institutions. It's about who's the boss at home. But then you have external sovereignty. This is about how a country acts on the world stage. It's a state's independence from other states. Its right to govern itself without some other country telling it what to do. Okay, this leads us to a really crucial distinction, and maybe my favorite part, the difference between having power on paper and having power in reality. So you've got what's called legal or de jure sovereignty. This is the authority that's based on law. It's written down in a constitution. It's who has the right to rule. But then there's political or de facto sovereignty. This is about who has the actual power to get things done, usually because they control the military or the police. Now, ideally, these two are in the same hands, but when they're not, that's when you get some serious political drama. And here's another way to look at that exact same idea. Titular sovereignty is when someone holds the title of ruler. Think of a king or queen who's a figurehead, but doesn't really have any say. Then you have the actual sovereignty, which belongs to the person or group that's really running the show, like a parliament. One gets the fancy crown, the other gets to make all the decisions. So, if power isn't always tied to a law or a title, where does that leave us today? Well, that brings us to a truly revolutionary idea: the rise of people power. This right here, this is a total game changer. Popular sovereignty completely flips the old script. It says that the ultimate, supreme power doesn't come from a king or a government or some dusty old law book. No, it says that authority comes from the people themselves. The philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau was a huge voice for this. He argued that true power is expressed through the general will of the people, the collective good, what's best for everyone as a whole. In this view, the government is basically just an employee of the people, hired to carry out their will. And why is this so important? Why should you care? Because this one principle, that power flows from the people, is the absolute foundation of modern democracy. It's the whole idea behind we the people. It's everything. All right, for our final section, let's look at the characteristics that make up this supreme power, at least in its purest, most theoretical form. These are what some call the unbreakable rules of sovereignty. So, theoretically, this ultimate power is supposed to be a bunch of things. It's absolute and universal, meaning it's the top authority over everyone and everything inside the borders. It's also permanent, it doesn't just disappear, and indivisible, meaning you can't just chop it up into little pieces. And get this, it's also exclusive, meaning there can only be one true sovereign. And it's inalienable, meaning that power can't just be given away. The whole idea is that there is one and only one final stop for power. Which brings us to a huge final question for our time. In a world like ours, with international treaties, giant global companies, and an internet that connects us all, can any nation really be absolutely sovereign anymore? Is this concept still a reality, or is it more of a powerful idea that we just like to hold on to? Definitely